Dr. Zixtel smoothed down her iridescent robe and adjusted her data tablet for the 100th time. The crystalline walls of Earth's military headquarters reflected the morning sunlight, creating rainbow patterns that reminded her of home. But she wasn't here to admire the architecture. As the Galactic Alliance's leading genopsychologist, she had a more important mission: understanding the human approach to warfare. Dr. Zixtal. A woman in a crisp blue uniform approached, her hand extended in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Captain Laura Bennett. Welcome to Earth Defense Force Headquarters." The alien researcher grasped the offered hand carefully with her three-fingered grip. "Thank you, Captain. My team and I are eager to begin our observations." Behind Dr. Zixtal, her three research assistants huddled together, their silver skin shimmering as they took notes on their devices. They had spent months studying human customs, but this was their first direct interaction with Earth's military personnel. Captain Bennett led them through the building's corridors, explaining the layout. "We've arranged for you to observe our training exercises, strategic planning sessions, and combat simulations. Is there anything specific you'd like to see first?" Dr. Zixtel consulted her tablet. "We would be most interested in watching your tactical response training. Our preliminary research suggests that humans have an unusual approach to battlefield decisions." Bennett smiled. "You could say that. We're running a combat simulation in Bay 3 right now. Lieutenant Peter Dixon's squad is testing new urban warfare tactics." They entered an observation room overlooking a massive training arena. Below, concrete barriers and mock buildings created a maze-like environment. Soldiers moved through the space in small groups, their training weapons at the ready. Dr. Zixtel's anterior eyes widened as she watched Lieutenant Dixon's squad respond to a surprise attack from training drones. Instead of following standard military doctrine, the humans split up and used seemingly random patterns to outflank their opponents. "Fascinating," she muttered, her fingers flying across her tablet. "They're deliberately creating chaos in their own formations." Captain Bennett nodded. "Lieutenant Dixon likes to keep the enemy guessing. His squad has one of the highest success rates in these exercises." The alien researcher turned to her assistants. "Note how they appear to communicate with minimal verbal exchange. Their actions suggest a shared understanding of unconventional tactics." As they watched, Dixon's squad faced a new challenge. The training drones deployed smoke screens, cutting off visual contact between team members. Standard military protocol would call for a retreat and regroup. Instead, the humans did something completely unexpected. Lieutenant Dixon's voice came through the observation room's speakers. "Time to play hide and seek. Folks, you know the drill." His squad members scattered in different directions, seemingly at random. Dr. Zixtel's assistants chittered in confusion. "This makes no tactical sense," one of them said. "They're sacrificing unit cohesion." Captain Bennett's smile widened. "Just watch." Within minutes, Dixon's squad had turned the smoke screen against the drones. Using the cover to their advantage, they picked off the automated opponents one by one from unexpected angles. When the simulation ended, they had achieved a perfect score. "Remarkable," Dr. Zixtel said. "They turned a tactical disadvantage into an advantage by embracing the chaos rather than fighting against it." The day continued with more surprises. They observed a strategic planning session, where Major Kelly Foster proposed a defense plan that seemed to deliberately leave gaps in their lines. These gaps, Foster explained to her superiors, aren't weaknesses. They're traps. Any enemy that tries to exploit them will find themselves in a crossfire they never saw coming. Dr. Zixtel's assistants recorded everything, but their confusion was evident. During a brief break, one of them approached her. "Doctor, how can we quantify this for our report?" Their methods defy standard military analysis. She considered the question carefully. "Perhaps that's exactly what we should be reporting. The human approach to warfare seems to include elements we've never considered before." Captain Bennett offered to show them the command center next. As they walked, Dr. Zixtel shared some of her initial thoughts. Your species appears to have a unique ability to function effectively in chaos. Most civilizations we study try to impose order on battlefield conditions. Humans seem to thrive on uncertainty. Bennett considered this. We have a saying, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Instead of fighting that reality, we've learned to use it. The command center was a hub of activity. Screens displayed various training exercises and simulations happening around the globe. Dr. Zixtal noticed something interesting about the command structure. Your officers give mission objectives, but often leave the specific tactics up to the squad leaders. That's right, Bennett confirmed. We found that giving our people flexibility in how they achieve their goals leads to better results. Sometimes the best solution isn't the obvious one. As if to prove her point, they watched another training exercise where a squad led by Sergeant Maria Alvarez used an unorthodox approach to complete their mission. Instead of a frontal assault on their objective, they created a series of distractions that made their small force appear much larger than it was. Deception within deception, Dr. Zixtal noted. And yet it's not chaos for chaos's sake. There's an underlying logic to their actions. The day's observations concluded with a debriefing session. Dr. Zixtal gathered her team to discuss their findings. The human approach to warfare appears to be built on several unique principles, she began. First, they accept and utilize uncertainty, rather than trying to eliminate it. Second, they encourage individual initiative within their command structure. Third, they seem to have an intuitive understanding of how to create and exploit chaos. Captain Bennett listened with interest. Those are good observations, but you haven't seen everything yet. Tomorrow we'll show you how we train our special operations teams. Dr. Zixtal's eyes brightened with anticipation. I look forward to it. Though I must admit, Captain, every time I think I understand human military thinking, your people surprise me again. That's kind of our specialty, Bennett replied with a grin. Keeping the enemy guessing is half the battle. As Dr. Zixtal prepared her initial report that evening, she found herself struggling to capture the essence of what she'd observed. The humans' approach to warfare wasn't just different, it was revolutionary. They had taken principles that most species considered military weaknesses and turned them into strengths. She wrote, "Human military doctrine appears to be based on a paradox. They create order from chaos by embracing chaos itself. Their unpredictability is not a lack of strategy, but rather a strategy in itself. Further study is needed to understand how this mindset developed and how it might be integrated into Galactic Alliance military thinking." Looking out her window at the Earth's night sky, Dr. Zixtal felt a mix of excitement and concern. If this was just the beginning of their study, what other surprises did humans have in store? And more importantly, how would this knowledge change the Alliance's understanding of warfare itself? Tomorrow would bring new observations, new puzzles, and undoubtedly more surprises. For now, she had to admit that humans had already challenged everything she thought she knew about military strategy. And somehow, she suspected that was exactly how they liked it. The gleaming halls of the Galactic Alliance testing facility buzzed with anticipation. Dr. Zixtal stood at the main observation window, watching as Major Daniel Harris and his squad prepared for the combat simulation. The Alliance had spent months designing this test to understand human military thinking, but she already suspected the humans would find a way to surprise them. "All monitoring systems are active," reported her assistant, Vexnor. "The scenario is loaded and ready." Below them, Major Harris adjusted his combat gear while briefing his 5-person team. The humans seemed relaxed, even joking with each other, which puzzled the alien observers. The simulation they were about to face was one of the most challenging scenarios in the Alliance database. "Beginning simulation in 3 minutes," announced the facility's eye. The testing chamber transformed around the human squad, holographic projectors creating a detailed urban environment. The mission was simple on paper: reach the objective point while facing unknown hostile forces. Dr. Zixtal leaned forward as the simulation began. "Now let's see how they handle this." The first challenge appeared immediately. Robotic enemies emerged from multiple directions, using tactics that had proven effective against other species. According to Alliance doctrine, the correct response was to find defensive positions and establish a clear field of fire. Major Harris did the opposite. "Split up," he ordered his team. "Samantha, take the high route. Chris and Paul, create some noise on the left. Linda, you're with me." Dr. Zixtel's antennae twitched in confusion. They're dividing their forces against superior numbers. The humans moved with practiced ease, but nothing they did matched the expected responses. Private Samantha Baker used the building's architecture in ways the designers hadn't anticipated, creating shortcuts by jumping between structures that weren't meant to be connected. On the left flank, Surgeons Chris Martinez and Paul White caused exactly the kind of chaos Harris wanted. They used small explosive charges not to damage the enemy, but to create confusion about their numbers and position. "Are they using their own equipment as distractions?" asked Vexnor, incredulous. "Indeed," Dr. Zixtel replied, making rapid notes. "They're sacrificing resources for tactical advantage." The simulation threw its second challenge. A sophisticated electronic warfare attack that should have disrupted team communications. The aliens expected this to force the humans to regroup. Instead, the squad seemed to operate even more effectively without direct communication. They moved in patterns that appeared random but somehow complemented each other perfectly. Major Harris and Private Linda Cooper encountered a heavily defended checkpoint. Rather than engage directly, they created an elaborate deception. Cooper fired from multiple positions, making it seem like a larger force was attacking, while Harris slipped through the enemy's blind spot. "This is remarkable," Dr. Zixtel muttered. "They're not just adapting to the scenario, they're rewriting its rules." The simulation's final phase activated, introducing an element that had stopped every other species, a no-win situation. The objective could only be reached by sacrificing team members, according to the program's logic. Harris's squad paused for exactly 3 seconds. "Ma'am," Vexnor said urgently, "they're doing something strange with their equipment." Dr. Zixtel watched in amazement as the humans began disassembling their gear. Within minutes, they had created makeshift tools that the simulation's parameters hadn't accounted for. Using these improvised devices, they found a way to bypass the final challenge entirely. "Simulation complete," announced the AI. "Objective achieved. 0 casualties." The observation room erupted in confused chittering from the alien researchers. Dr. Zixtel raised her hands for silence. "Major Harris," she called through the communication system, "would you explain your team's approach?" Harris grinned up at the observation window. "Simple, really. Your simulation assumed we play by standard military rules. But humans learned long ago that sometimes the best solution is to change the game entirely." The debriefing session that followed was even more enlightening. The human squad broke down their decisions, revealing layers of strategy that the aliens had missed entirely. "You see," Harris explained, pointing to a replay of their mission. "Traditional military thinking often assumes that chaos is the enemy. We've learned to make it our friend." Private Baker added, "When we split up, it wasn't random. We've trained to read each other's movements. Even without direct communication, we knew where everyone would be." Dr. Zixtel's report that evening was the longest she'd ever written. "Human military units," she wrote, "demonstrate an extraordinary ability to function as both individuals and a collective. They operate with a fluid strategy that adapts not just circumstances, but actively works to change those circumstances to their advantage." The next day, the Alliance commanders requested a meeting to discuss the test results. The humans had achieved something unprecedented. They had broken the simulation not by brute force or superior technology, but by thinking in ways the designers had never considered possible. "We need to understand how they do this," insisted High Commanders Earl. "Their approach to warfare defies everything we know about military strategy." Dr. Zixtel stood before the Commander's Council, her data tablet filled with observations. "I believe we're looking at it wrong," she said. "We designed this test to measure how humans respond to chaos in warfare. What we should be studying is how they create and control chaos itself." The council chamber filled with murmurs. Creating chaos on purpose went against every military principle the Alliance had developed over millennia. "Look at this footage," Dr. Zixtal continued, playing back scenes from the simulation. "Every time we thought they were acting randomly, they were actually setting up their next 3 moves. They don't just react to the unexpected, they make the unexpected work for them." Major Harris and his squad were invited to demonstrate their techniques to Alliance military leaders. As they explained their thinking, Dr. Zixtal saw the alien commander's expressions shift from skepticism to understanding, and finally to respect. "In human military history," Harris explained, "the most successful strategies often came from doing what the enemy thought was impossible or irrational. We learned to use that principle at every level of combat." As the day ended, Dr. Zixtal made her final notes on the test scenario. She had come seeking to understand human military thinking, but she realized now that was just the beginning. The humans hadn't just passed their test, they had revealed an entirely new way of approaching warfare itself. Her last entry read, "Perhaps the greatest strength of human military thinking is not their ability to create plans, but their talent for breaking them when necessary. They have mastered the art of controlled chaos in a way that redefines what we consider possible in warfare. The question now is not how to test them further, but how much they can teach us." The test scenario had done more than evaluate human capabilities. It had opened the Alliance's eyes to possibilities they had never imagined. And somewhere in that revelation lay the key to understanding the true power of the human war mind. The emergency alert blared through the Galactic Alliance headquarters, its piercing tone cutting through the usual calm atmosphere. Dr. Zixtal rushed to the central command room, her research tablets clutched tightly against her chest. The massive display screen showed a terrifying sight. The Krixnor battle fleet, nearly 100 ships strong, was headed straight for the solar system. Commander Susan Pierce of the Earth Defense Force stood at the center of the room, her face illuminated by the holographic displays. Around her, Alliance officers argued in their various languages about the proper response to this crisis. "The Krixnor have never attacked this deep in Alliance space," said High Commander Zerl, his crystalline form shimmering with anxiety. "We must respond with traditional defensive formations." Commander Pierce shook her head. "With all due respect, that's exactly what they'll expect. Let Earth's forces take the lead on this one." The alien leaders turned to her, their expressions showing various forms of disbelief and concern. Dr. Zixtal watched with interest, her research about human military thinking suddenly very relevant. "Commander Pierce," Zerl said carefully, "your species has never faced a threat of this magnitude. The Krixnor are the most aggressive species we've encountered. Their battle tactics are unpredictable and savage." A small smile crossed Pierce's face. "Unpredictable and savage. Sounds like they haven't met humans yet." She stepped forward and manipulated the holographic display, highlighting the approaching enemy fleet. "Look at their formation. They're expecting us to react the way the Alliance always does, with a regulated, organized defense. But we can use that expectation against them." Dr. Zixtal moved closer, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Commander Zerl, my research suggests we should listen to the humans. They have demonstrated remarkable tactical abilities in unexpected situations." The debate raged for precious minutes until finally, Admiral Kate Nelson of the Earth Fleet arrived. She wasted no time taking control of the situation. "Here's what we're going to do," Nelson announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "First, we'll make it look like we're following standard Alliance protocols. Meanwhile, we'll position our forces in ways the Krixnor won't expect." She outlined a plan that made the alien commanders stare in disbelief. It involved using Earth's smaller ships in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine. The human approach relied heavily on deception, misdirection, and calculated risks. "This is madness," one of the Alliance commanders protested. "You're suggesting we deliberately create weak points in our defense." No, Nelson corrected. I'm suggesting we create apparent weak points. The Krixnor will see exactly what we want them to see. As the human commanders explained their strategy, Dr. Zixtel furiously took notes. The plan demonstrated everything she had observed about human military thinking: their ability to use chaos as a weapon, their talent for turning disadvantages into advantages, and their unique way of viewing battlefield dynamics. Time was running out. The Krixnor fleet would reach the outer solar system in less than 12 hours. Finally, High Commander Zerl made his decision. "We will try the human way," he announced. "But I pray to the stars we are not making a terrible mistake." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Earth ships moved into position, appearing to follow traditional alliance formations, while secretly preparing for something entirely different. Commander Pierce coordinated with alliance vessels, teaching them new tactics that went against centuries of military doctrine. Dr. Zixtel found herself working directly with the human commanders, her research providing insight into how their strategy might appear to the enemy. "The Krixnor have never encountered human military thinking," she explained. "They won't be prepared for this level of tactical flexibility." The first contact with the enemy fleet came right on schedule. The Krixnor ships, massive and bristling with weapons, approached in their characteristic attack formation. At first, everything seemed to go according to their plan. Then the humans sprang their trap. Earth ships suddenly broke formation in ways that appeared chaotic, but were actually carefully coordinated. Alliance vessels, following the humans' lead, executed maneuvers that had never been tried in real combat. "Look at their response," Admiral Nelson pointed out as the Krixnor fleet tried to adapt. "They're following their standard protocols for dealing with broken formations." That's exactly what we wanted. The battle unfolded like nothing the Alliance had ever seen. Human ships used debris fields as cover, performed high-risk maneuvers that confused enemy targeting systems, and turned their own ships' limitations into surprising advantages. Commander Pierce directed her forces with calm efficiency, adjusting tactics on the fly as the situation evolved. The Krixnor commanders, faced with an enemy that didn't behave according to any known military logic, began making mistakes. "They're trying to impose order on the battlefield," Dr. Zixtal observed. "But the humans are making that impossible." The turning point came when the Krixnor fleet attempted to regroup and launch a concentrated attack. Instead of opposing this move, the human commanders encouraged it, creating an apparent vulnerability in their lines. "Now we've got them," Pierce said with satisfaction as the enemy fleet moved exactly where she wanted them. The trap closed. Earth ships emerged from hiding places the Krixnor hadn't even considered possible. Alliance vessels, now comfortable with human tactics, struck from unexpected angles. The enemy fleet found itself caught in a web of crossfire and confusion. Hours later, as the Krixnor fleet retreated in disarray, the Alliance commanders gathered to assess what had happened. The humans had achieved something unprecedented. They had driven off a superior force while suffering minimal casualties. "I think I understand now," High Commander Zerl said, addressing Commander Pierce and Admiral Nelson. "Your species doesn't just adapt to chaos in battle. You create it, shape it, and use it as a weapon." Dr. Zixtel stepped forward, her research tablets full of new observations. "This battle proves everything we've learned about human military thinking. They succeed not despite their unpredictability, but because of it." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Commander Pierce gathered her officers for a debriefing. The Alliance leaders listened intently as she explained each phase of the battle, revealing layers of strategy that even Dr. Zixtal hadn't noticed. "The key," Pierce explained, "was never letting them feel secure in their assumptions. Every time they thought they had us figured out, we changed the rules of engagement. The crisis had passed, but its implications would be felt for years to come." The Alliance had seen firsthand the value of human military thinking, and the Krixnor had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating Earth's forces. Dr. Zixtal's final notes on the battle included a simple but profound observation. The humans didn't win by being stronger or more advanced. They won by being human, by thinking in ways other species would never consider. Perhaps that is their greatest military advantage of all. Lieutenant John Martinez crouched behind a fallen support beam, his breath steady despite the chaos around him. The remnants of the Krixnor fleet had taken refuge in an abandoned space station, and now his team had to clear them out. But instead of following the Alliance's standard room-by-room clearing protocols, he had something else in mind. "Okay, folks," he whispered into his comm, "time to show them how humans handle close-quarters combat." Dr. Zixtal watched from the command center as Martinez's team began their operation. After the recent space battle, she had been eager to observe how humans handled ground combat against the Krixnor. "What are they doing?" asked one of the Alliance commanders. "They're splitting up again. That goes against all standard boarding procedures." On the screens, Martinez's team moved through the station in what appeared to be random patterns. Some crawled through maintenance ducts, others used the station's artificial gravity controls to create unexpected angles of attack. "They're treating the entire station as one big puzzle," Dr. Zixtal explained, her eyes fixed on the displays. "See how they're not just moving through the space, they're changing it to suit their needs." Martinez's voice crackled over the comm as his team engaged the first group of Krixnor defenders. "Remember, the station's layout is just a suggestion, not a rule." What followed was a masterclass in human tactical thinking. The team used the station's own systems against the defenders, venting atmosphere from some sections, overloading power conduits in others, and creating confusion about their numbers and positions. "Remarkable," Dr. Zixtal muttered, taking notes. "They're not just fighting the enemy, they're fighting the environment itself, and winning at both." The Krixnor, used to facing opponents who followed logical patterns of attack, found themselves constantly wrong-footed. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, Martinez's team would appear from an impossible direction, or use the station's systems in ways the designers never intended. Private Alice Henderson demonstrated this perfectly when she reprogrammed a cargo loading system to create a makeshift battering ram, clearing a heavily defended corridor in seconds. "Sometimes the best weapon isn't a weapon at all," she quipped over the comm. In the command center, Alliance military experts watched with growing appreciation. The humans were rewriting the book on space station combat in real time. "Look at how they use sound and silence," Dr. Zixtal pointed out. "They're not just moving through the station. They're conducting a psychological operation against the defenders." Martinez's team had started making noise in one section while silently advancing through another. They used the station's internal communication system to create phantom sounds of movement, keeping the Krixnor guessing about their true location. "This is why they're so effective," Dr. Zixtal explained to the gathered officers. "Every action serves multiple purposes. Nothing is wasted, not even noise." The operation reached its critical point when the team cornered the main Krixnor force in the station's central hub. Standard doctrine called for a prolonged siege or a costly frontal assault. Martinez had other ideas. "Time to show them our party trick," he said. His team had secretly been setting up for this moment from the start. Using precise timing and coordinated movements, they triggered multiple system failures throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, artificial gravity fluctuated, and air pressure changed unpredictably. In the confusion, Martinez's team struck from 5 different directions simultaneously. The Krixnor, their superior numbers meaning nothing in the chaos, surrendered within minutes. As the team secured their prisoners, Dr. Zixtal completed her analysis. "The humans didn't just defeat the enemy," she reported to the Alliance commanders. "They changed the entire nature of the battlefield. They turned a space station, something designed to be predictable and controlled, into a weapon of chaos." Later, during the debriefing, Martinez explained his team's approach. "Most species see a space station as a fixed environment with rules you have to follow. We see it as a box of tools waiting to be used in new ways." The Alliance commanders listened intently as he broke down each phase of the operation, What had seemed like random actions were revealed to be part of an intricate plan, one that allowed for constant adaptation and improvisation. But how do you train for this kind of warfare? One of the alien officers asked. There's no standard procedure to follow. Sergeant Ben Carter grinned. That's exactly the point. We train to think, not just to follow procedures. The best procedure is the one the enemy doesn't expect. Dr. Zixfel's research was proving invaluable to the Alliance's understanding of human combat methods. Their approach to warfare isn't just about weapons or tactics, she explained. It's about seeing possibilities where others see only obstacles. The success of Martinez's team led to immediate changes in Alliance training protocols. Human instructors were brought in to teach their methods to other species forces. It wasn't easy. Many found it difficult to break free from centuries of established military doctrine. The hardest part, Martinez explained to a group of alien trainees, is learning to trust your instincts while still maintaining control. Chaos is a tool, not the goal. As Dr. Zixtel compiled her latest reports, she noted how the human approach to combat had evolved even further during the station operation. They had taken their natural adaptability and turned it into a precision instrument. The human factor in warfare, she wrote, isn't just their unpredictability. It's their ability to make that unpredictability serve a purpose. They don't just embrace chaos. They direct it, shape it, and use it to achieve their objectives. The operation had proven something else too. The Krixnor, despite their fearsome reputation, had been completely outmaneuvered by human thinking. It wasn't superior technology or numbers that had won the day. It was the unique human approach to problem solving. As the Alliance began incorporating these lessons into their military doctrine, Dr. Zixtel realized she was witnessing a fundamental shift in how warfare would be conducted across the galaxy. The humans hadn't just demonstrated a new way of fighting. They had shown that the very nature of combat could be redefined. Martinez's team had opened new possibilities that would change military thinking for generations to come. And somehow, Dr. Zixtel suspected, this was just the beginning of what humans could teach the galaxy about the art of war. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Alliance Military Academy buzzed with activity. Today marked the first graduation of the newly formed Joint Combat Integration Program, where Captain Amy Roberts had spent the past year teaching human military concepts to alien species. Dr. Zixtel sat in the front row, her final research report complete after months of observing this unprecedented experiment. On stage, beings from 20 different species waited to receive their certificates, each one trained in what the Alliance now called human adaptive combat. When we started this program, Captain Roberts began her speech. Many thought it was impossible. How could we teach other species to think like humans in combat situations? But what we discovered was even more interesting. We weren't teaching them to think like humans. We were teaching them to think differently. The audience listened intently as she continued. Among them sat Alliance military leaders who had once doubted the value of human military thinking. Now, after the victories against the Krixnor, those doubts had vanished. The key was understanding that chaos isn't our enemy, Roberts explained, gesturing to her graduating class. Each species here has learned to use uncertainty as a tool, to see possibilities where before they only saw problems. Dr. Zixfel's research had been crucial in developing the training program. She had identified the core elements of human military thinking that could be taught to other species: adaptive strategy, creative problem solving, and controlled chaos theory. The first graduate to receive their certificate was Krellix, a crystalline being who had struggled initially with human concepts. Now he commanded one of the most effective mixed-species units in the Alliance fleet. The humans taught us that plans are just the beginning, Krellix said during his acceptance speech. It's how you adapt those plans that matters. After the ceremony, Captain Roberts led a demonstration of the new combat techniques. The graduating class split into teams, each showing how they had merged human tactical thinking with their own species' natural abilities. Watch this, Dr. Zixtel pointed out to the observing Alliance commanders. See how they're using their different physical capabilities in ways we never considered before. A team of aquatic beings demonstrated how they had adapted human flanking maneuvers to three-dimensional space, using their natural agility in ways that surprised even their instructors. Another group, composed of energy-based life forms, showed new applications of human deception tactics that took advantage of their unique nature. The beauty of it, Roberts explained later during the reception, is that each species brings something new to these techniques. We're not just teaching, we're learning too. The success of the program had led to immediate changes in Alliance military structure. Mixed species units became common, with each member contributing their unique perspectives and abilities to the whole. Human officers served as advisors, helping to bridge the gap between traditional Alliance doctrine and new adaptive strategies. Dr. Zixtel's final research paper included extensive analysis of these changes. The integration of human military thinking, she wrote, has not only improved our combat effectiveness, but has led to better understanding between species. Working together in chaos has created stronger bonds than working together in order ever did. The day concluded with a practical demonstration that showed just how far things had come. A mixed team of graduates faced off against a traditional Alliance unit in a complex combat simulation. The graduates used their new skills to complete the objective in ways that would have been impossible just a year ago. See how they're thinking in multiple dimensions. Roberts pointed out to the observers. They're not just moving through space, they're reshaping it to their advantage, just like humans do. The impact of the program reached beyond military applications. Other fields began adopting human adaptive thinking principles, from emergency response to space exploration. The ability to function effectively in chaos proved valuable in many situations. What we've really taught them, Roberts explained to Dr. Zixtel during a quiet moment, is that uncertainty isn't something to fear. It's an opportunity waiting to be seized. As the day came to a close, the graduates gathered for one final group image. They represented the future of Alliance military forces, a future that combined the best of human tactical thinking with the unique abilities of countless alien species. Dr. Zixtel added a personal note to her final report. When we first began studying human military thinking, we thought we were researching a curiosity. What we discovered was a new way of understanding not just warfare, but problem-solving itself. The humans have taught us that true strength lies not in following established patterns, but in knowing when and how to break them. The success of the integration program led to the establishment of permanent human military advisors throughout Alliance space. Each brought with them the unique human perspective that had proven so valuable in combat situations. Captain Roberts prepared for her next class of students, knowing that each group would bring new challenges and opportunities. The best part, she told Dr. Zixtel, is that we're just getting started. Every species brings their own perspective to these techniques, creating new possibilities we haven't even imagined yet. The Galactic Alliance had changed forever. The integration of human military thinking had done more than improve their combat effectiveness. It had shown them new ways of approaching problems, new ways of working together, and new ways of understanding the universe itself. As Dr. Zixtel filed her final report, she included one last observation. The humans have given us more than new military tactics. They've shown us that the greatest strength lies not in resisting chaos, but in learning to dance with it. This may be their greatest contribution to galactic civilization. The story of how humans changed galactic military thinking had only just begun. But already it was clear that nothing would ever be quite the same again.